All right. Good morning, guys. Sorry, I'm getting my camera here set in the right position. Good morning. It is a chilly December morning. It is officially the beginning of Advent, so Merry Christmas to you. It is the beginning of our Christmas season. I'm going to try really hard to make this a shorter one, and I apologize in advance if I'm stumbling over myself. I've got very limited time, so today is the part 2 of my go to church videos here. Today we're going to focus on some numbers. So I have a couple of different studies to share with you. I'm just going to give you the highlights. We're going to look first at a snapshot of the current state of the church in the United States. And then I want to go over some of the benefits, statistical, data collection type benefits to attending church regularly. So let's get to it. Currently in the United States, so two big things. People who identify as Christian and the rates of weekly church attendance. Those are two key things I want to look at. So I've got a report from Gallup and a report from Pew Research Center here. So from Gallup, they are reporting that currently only 30% of American adults attend weekly religious services. And that would mean that significantly fewer than that are Christians. So that is sadly very low. They do break them up into some different groups here. So Christians, they break up into Protestant, Catholic, and Orthodox. I am increasingly of the camp in belief that we're at the point it's appropriate to draw a division between actually Protestant and evangelical. And that will be a discussion for another day. But for the sake of this study, they just lump all that together. So you've got your high church Anglicans in here with your non-denominationals and everything in between. So of them, 44% attend weekly. So not terrible, definitely better than the national average. But almost that exact same amount do not attend at all, but they still consider themselves Protestant. And this has been declining over the years. So this goes back, they started really digging into this around 2000. And so this is a look at the last 25 years. Catholics are only slightly better than the U.S. average. So they are worse than Protestants with only 33% that attend weekly. And a full 50% seldom or never go. And that has been declining from 45% in the year 2000 down to 33% today. So Catholics, I love you guys, but we got to do better than that. And then the Orthodox, so something worth note. Protestant and Catholics have pretty big sample sizes, so we can be pretty confident in theirs. The Orthodox might be off. They only had 150 people respond versus the 6,000 or so Catholics and the over 15,000 Protestants. So the Orthodox appear to be the most inactive with a 26%. So 1 in 4 are attending weekly. And that is down from 35%. So again, really small sample size, so probably not the most accurate. Hopefully that'll improve in the future. But if you are any of those three, I highly encourage you to get into church. They need you, I promise. To compare, I want to give some kind of cultural rivals here. The Mormons are blowing it out of the water. They are way out ahead of the pack. 2 out of every 3 Mormons go to church every week. And that has almost not changed at all since the year 2000. So they're pretty consistent. They did have a little bump in the years like 2011 to 2013. But that's come back down and it's remained mostly stable around 67, 68%. Islam has had an increase. They kind of have another little bump like that, but they are still a net positive 4% growth over the last 24 years. And then Judaism actually has an increase of 7% over the last 25 years. So Christians, meanwhile, are falling behind. So not good. When we dig into the Pew study, we learn a little bit more about kind of the identity. So not just church attendance, but back in 2007, when they really started doing what's called the religious landscape study. And again, I'm going to try to post these links probably later on in the description. So look out for those there. I do like to go to Gallup and Pew whenever I can. I trust them for the most part. But they have huge sample sizes. Whenever they do this, they consistently get more than 35,000 people responding. So this is a pretty good confidence on this. The percent of Americans who identify as Christian back in 2007 was 78%, so just under 4 out of 5. Today, that is 62%, and even that's high because that's including Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses and some other groups like that. So, and for comparison, I don't have it here, but there's studies that are showing way back in about 1970 to the early 70s, over 90% of Americans were Christian at that time, or at least considered themselves such. So it has just been a steady decline, which I'm sure if you pay attention to the state of the church at all, that's not really a big surprise, but it needs to be a wake-up call. Now, that has potentially leveled off. So back in 2019, about 6 years ago now, we were at 63%. Today, we're only down to about 62%. So it could be slowing down, if not plateauing. Hopefully we start to see growth, but it's still a little early to kind of tell what that trend is going to be, or if it's just a temporary kind of lull. Of U.S. adults, so this is going to get into the makeup here. So 62% today, and I know this is changing quick, so even this 62% number might be a little off. 40%, and this is of total U.S. adults, so we're getting into the makeup of that 62 number. So 40 are Protestant, 19 are Catholic, and 3 are everything else. And that includes Orthodox, which is odd because I thought they were having a pretty significant rise to the point of multiple times more than they had here within the last few years within the U.S. Multiple times as far as like raw numbers of people. Very interested in the Orthodox growth, so I want to see in the future if I can find something more clear on their growth. But 7% of Americans are religions other than the United States, or religions other than Christianity. I hope they're religions other than American. You've got Jews at about 1.7%, Muslims at 1.2%, Buddhist and Hindu both hovering around a percentage point, and 2% made up of a hodgepodge of everything else. So that number has grown over the last few years from 4.7 to 7.1. So I really hope that wasn't all just blowing right in that mic the whole time. And then another significant note is the nuns, and that is religious nuns, not Catholic nuns. So 29%, about 3 in 10 Americans, consider themselves either atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular. And that has grown steadily over the years. So I want to show a couple other interesting things of note. So even though Christian identity has been decreasing, 92% of people, of Americans, believe in at least one of the following, one or more. They either believe in the soul or the spirit, they believe in God or a universal spirit, they believe there's something spiritual beyond the natural world that we see, or they do believe in an afterlife. And those are all vast majorities. And like I said, of those, over 90% of Americans still believe in at least one of those things. So it's not that 30% of the U.S. is atheist, but a lot of people are out there just kind of making it up as they go along, but they feel like there's still something more going on. So, and then something interesting is they compared the youngest group, which is 18 to 24s, to the oldest, which is 74%, or 74 years old or older. Not as positive as you might expect. So after this last election, people were getting all excited because they thought, oh, the young kids are going to be okay. You know, their Gen Z is more based than ever. Well, that may not exactly be the case, because here the youngest are less likely to identify as Christian, so only 46% are Christian versus 80% of the oldest group. Only 27% pray daily versus 58% of the oldest. I'm sorry, I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you and I don't have any kind of pictures here, but one day we will get there. And only 25, so 1 in 4 of that youngest age group attend religious services at least monthly. So that's not even... Got my alfalfa sprout in the back. Oh, I just made it worse. Okay. But only 1 in 4 are going to church at least once a month, which I will take over not going at all, but that is still insufficient. And that number is very, very low compared to about 1 in 2 of the oldest group. So, and then the youngest are also significantly more likely to consider themselves religiously unaffiliated. So this is 43% versus the 13% of the oldest group who do. So, looks like the youngsters are a mission field, and that is actually a reason why I wanted to start this channel. My little brother is significantly younger than me, so there's about a 10-year gap between us, and he and I get along very well, and I know a lot of his friends, and I just want to do at least my small part to try to reach out to some of those people. I know social media is huge for people right now, so thank you, first of all, for watching, and if you're out there listening to this, no matter if that's today or years after this has been posted, go look for a church, man. You're going to be better for it. And here's some of the benefits why. So, this is from Duke University in North Carolina. They have a group called the Center for Spirituality, Theology, and Health. So we're getting into the benefits now. People who frequently attend religious gatherings live, on average, 8 years longer than those who do not. That's very interesting. Sadly, a negative note here. So COVID, with all the wonderful things that happened in that time period, reduced church attendance by 25 to 33%. And many who attended regularly are now going significantly less often. And we've still not really recovered from that. And we're multiple years past it now. Harvard University, of all places, has the Human Flourishing Project. And this is, from what I understand, it's an ongoing study where they are continuing to compile information on the benefits. So some of these have stats, some of these don't. So I'm going to read through you a list of the things that they have linked with regular church attendance, and that is defined as at least weekly attendance. And then we have some numbers here at the end. So, as we've already said, it's connected with greater longevity, so going to church regularly gives you longer lifespan, less smoking, less substance abuse, better cancer and cardiovascular disease survival. That's interesting. Greater social support, greater meaning in life, greater life satisfaction, more volunteering, and greater civic engagement. And if you're a Christian regularly attending church, I'm sure none of those are really a big surprise to you. But listen to this. You are also at a 29% reduced risk of depression, so 20 to 30 there, 33% reduced risk of death, kind of already mentioned that earlier, 50% reduced risk of divorce, and 84% reduced risk of suicide. And some of the reasons they think this might be the case is, number one, religious communities broaden your social support system, so you got more people that are paying attention to you and what's going on in your life. Number two, religious teaching on themes from forgiveness to reconciliation to abstaining from vices contributes to your health. Kind of a duh statement there. If you're being taught not to go out and be a hooligan, it's going to be better for you in the long run. And then number three, religious participation leads to higher experiences of meaning and purpose. So, kind of some academic-ish language in there, but they got the right spirit, I guess. So the NIH, National Institute of Health, which if you're conservative like me, you're very wary, but I want to cite some good sources for this stuff, and for all intents and purposes, they are a credible source, especially, so think of it this way, if you are more suspicious of them, and they are telling us these things, then that should really be good evidence, because they're not really incentivized to promote going to church. As a matter of fact, with mentioning COVID earlier, some of their actions and decisions have actually hurt churches. So it's interesting that they also back up a lot of what the Harvard studies are finding, they're probably looking at some of the same studies, to be honest. I didn't really dig super deep. This is kind of surface level, but by all means, go and read for yourselves. But they did find things like 26% lower risk of all-cause mortality, 34% lower risk of heavy drinking, 29% less likely to smoke. It's also inversely associated with depression, anxiety, hopelessness, and loneliness. So as church attendance goes up, all those things go down. Lots of different stuff here. I know I'm droning on at this point and I want to wrap it up, but I guess some final thoughts. There's a lot of data that is clearly showing, and this is continuing to go and grow a body of information here as we go, but is clearly showing numerous individual benefits for sure for you being a part of a church. But when you think of things like lower rates of divorce, higher happiness and life satisfaction, couples praying together, and increasing their forgiveness, their gratitude to one another, and their trust, that's going to stabilize those marriage relationships, which in turn is going to make for a more stable home, because if mom and dad are getting along and pushing through it and sticking together and being forgiving and loving to one another, that's going to be good for the kids. And when you have stable homes, you're going to start to build stable communities, which are going to build a stable country. So, again, I'm going to try to share these things with you guys. I got to cut it off here. I got to get to work. But thank you very much for listening. And I look forward to digging into more of this stuff in the future. We'll try to slow it down, and we'll go through some of the specifics. One day I'm going to start throwing stuff up on the screen so you can see. But right now, this is what I got. My resources are very limited. This is what I got. So for the foreseeable future, thank you very much for giving me a little bit of your time. God bless you. Happy Advent. And I look forward to joining you guys next time.